let's go into some videos. Let's do. I got some Ramsey stuff today. I know we do Ramsey a lot, but I want to talk about this again. Remember the deal with we have kind of a labor shortage right now in the country, and part of it is they're talking about this 7 million men that aren't working or looking for work, right? I want to go over this again because this is a really interesting conservative position they take on it, and it's wrong because there is an actual right answer to this question about why is this happening and what can we do about it. But they don't ever want to address it. I want to go through it real quick because it just amuses me that they're still on this after years, and they should know better by now. So we're gonna watch this Mike Rowe and Dave Ramsey whining about men not wanting to work.
One of my favorite podcasts I listen to is a guy who's become a friend, Mike Rowe. He let me come on the podcast one time. The ratings went down dramatically. He hasn't spoken to me since, but we did a long form with him and America's famous dirty jobs guy, and he and I have done several things together since he spoke here at Entree Leadership in 2020 in the middle of crazy land at the time, and we've been having this conversation lately off and on from 2 or 3 different angles about the labor crisis in America. So I wanted to have Mike on and talk about it for just a few minutes. Welcome back, my friend.
Good to see you, Dave. And boy, 2020, that was a time. I was so grateful you invited me to that thing because it was the first time I felt like, okay, the world's not completely crap the bed. Somebody sensible is still living life. And it was good to be there with you and the whole gang.
Well, and I mean, just let's talk about the truth of it is you've never gotten as much hate mail as you got from doing that event. So it was awesome. I mean, you pissed off everybody by being here because I was in the middle of pissing off the entire world doing the thing. It was pretty crazy. So it was fun though. Hey, why not? Why not? We got to do it.
Okay, that's they're taking forever here. The 2 things. The Entree Leadership deal is one of their big seminar events they do. Tickets run
right. It's a weekend seminar, sort of something.
Yeah, tickets per person run one between $3,000 to $5,000, and so you go there to get basically told you need to save money after you spent $3,000 to $5,000. Plus, you had to probably fly there and get a hotel and all that shit. So that's stupid. The other thing about it is they're talking about they did it in 2020. Hey, remember what was going on in 2020? It was a freaking pandemic, and there were no vaccines, no treatments. So they crammed a bunch of people together in a conference room or, whatever, hotel ballroom to do their little seminar. And they're talking about, see, at least we were sane. Like, you're lucky you guys are fucking alive. How many of your audience died because they went?
Yeah, that would be curious.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I just couldn't believe that they're laughing about it now. Ha ha ha. 1 million Americans are dead. Ho ho ho.
But you and I have gotten to talk about not only the idea that we've talked about around the student loan crisis. You appeared on our Borrowed Future documentary. We've looked at this labor thing through the student loan crisis. The idea that college is necessary to succeed is absolute bunk. Nothing wrong with college, but the idea that it's the only ticket to success is crazy. What that messaging has done to the trades and how it's killed them, that there's just this backlog of need in the trades now, and you're a champion of that and have done such a good job with it. We've talked about that. You and I have been on the air talking about your work ethic scholarship and the.
So I want to get into that. So that's he summed up sort of the end game proposition there, which is, look, we have a labor crisis. People aren't working, right? The problem is that people are going to college, and that's what's getting them in the debt, and then they don't work and they don't care and blah blah blah. Right? That's their hypothesis on this, right? And what the real answer is you don't go to college and you get some trade job, right? And that somehow more people are going to work. And that's going to fix the economy, right? What they're missing, though, is the vast majority of trade jobs anymore require some college. And we've gone through this before. 75% of all new jobs being created require college, require a bachelor's degree or more. And I remember Mike Rowe. They did the Borrowed Futures documentary, and Mike Rowe was talking about, well, why would you go to college when you could just be a plumber and make $100,000 a year? And I went and looked it up, and you can make $100,000 a year as a plumber on average, but it requires a bachelor's degree. So what they're talking about is bullshit. So that's not a solution here. And then Mike's going to go into this sort of what he thinks the problem is, right? But their solution is essentially don't go to school and get a skill and somehow get a trade job. But I don't know how do you get a skill to do it if you don't have schooling? Right? That's what I don't get.
Well,
Unless
I
you get an
guess-
apprenticeship, but how many people get those?
right. And I was, sort of thinking, I guess they're maybe thinking about college in the most proper sense
No, they're thinking
when they're saying this, but I don't know. When I stop and I consider the programs people in a lot of the trades have to go through, whether you call it college or not, like it really kind of is. Like there's this coursework sort of situation, which is basically what college is. Sometimes they're literally through colleges, and sometimes they're through their own sort of trade school, but hence the word school with trade school.
Well, right. But a lot of the trade schools are community colleges,
Right?
which is a college. It just doesn't offer a 4-year degree. They offer associate's degrees. But it's still college. That's why I think freaking community college should be free. Period. I think 4-year schools should be free too, but public schools. But community colleges absolutely should be free. Everybody should be able to get an associate's degree for free. But that's just that's my minimum. I think in general you should be able to get a 4-year degree for free. But yeah, but here's Mike Rowe, and he's going to go off a little. I skipped ahead a little bit, but he's going to go off a little bit on his thing about it. But he's once again, they're kind of, it's a backwards way of thinking on this.
A vice, and almost vice versa in some ways. Work ethic, for instance, is officially a bad word in a lot of corporate handbooks now. Ambition, drive, delayed gratification, all the stuff that used to be baked into the basic Boy Scout oath has become, what's the word? Problematic, right? And so
So here's he sums it up so well there. That's their philosophy, though. That's driving this, and it's a conservative philosophy, and it's not based on facts or data. It's based on their opinion of the world, and their opinion of the world. If you don't want to work, it's because you're lazy and you don't believe in effort or good morals, or those things are problematic, right? And as you can see, they're not in employee handbooks anymore. They don't put those in handbooks, right? Well, I looked that up because that seemed like bullshit to me, as somebody who owns a business and hired people, right, who's gone through other people's employees' handbooks. Usually you're not even talking about that shit in the employee handbook. So let's look at what an employee handbook is. Here's an article from Forbes. I pulled this from my business files, actually, this article, because I did some research on it. So the employee handbook is one of the most important components of employment attorneys advise companies to have and update regularly. The reasons for this are simple. Employee handbooks not only formalize guidelines, expectations, and terms and conditions of employment, but more important, they can also help provide a layer of protection against employee claims and lawsuits. So the employment handbook is not there as a motivational tool. It's there to cover my ass as an employer, right? Because I have it now written down.
Makes sense. In it, you're also saying what people can do and can't do. What is dress code? What happens if you're not on time? I mean, things that seem sort of like really basic, dumb stuff. But these are the grounds to which you write people up. These are the grounds to which people, maybe not right off the cuff, get terminated, but eventually can get terminated when they have too many write-ups.
Right.
So yeah, there's a reason that it's all in there.
Well, right, because people forget shit like this. So, like, let's say I fire an employee, right, and they go out to unemployment. Okay, unemployment is going to take whatever their claim is, and they're going to send it to me and go, well, hey, this person claimed that you fired them without cause, right, without a good reason, right? I'm going to have to sit there and go, well, no, I had a good reason. Well, what was that? Well, I caught them sleeping on the job or something, right? And they'll be like, okay, did you give them a warning? No, I just fired them. Okay, well, you have to give them a warning or something, or write them up, right? You have to give them. You have to show that there was an opportunity, right? But that's why you have an employee handbook. Sit there and go, hey, you get 1 verbal and 2 written, and then you're out.
Right.
But then I can show them, look, I did. I gave them the 1 verbal, and I noted it, and then I gave them 2 written for the same thing, and then I fired them, and it says in our employee handbook that I could do that. Then unemployment's going to side with me and say, no, you were rightfully terminated. If they decide to side with the employee, then guess who's paying their unemployment insurance?
Ding, ding, ding.
The employer. So that's how that works. But that's how, I mean, so when we're talking about this, he's talking about it, well, work ethic and drive and all that, then responsibility and, you know, and all that crap. Why would that be in the employee handbook? It normally wouldn't. These are the things you'd normally find in an employee handbook: compensation and benefits, vacation, sick paid leave, dress code, workplace safety, non-disclosure agreements, conflicts of interest, internet usage, how to file report workplace complaints, equal employment, disability, anti-discrimination policies, worker compensation policies. Where in that list would I be putting in drive and motivation and work ethic and da-da-da? I wouldn't, right?
Mm-mm.
So once again, Mike Rowe is full of shit. He's lying to you. They did not decide to take those out of employee manuals. Nobody thinks to put them in, right? Because how do I define, well, if you show this amount of drive, then you'll get a bonus. That's not defined.
You can't measure that.
No.
Therefore, you literally signing yourself up to get sued because people are like,
Because I'm being vague.
you can't quantify that.
Right. That's what he doesn't understand. It's a legal document. It's not, it's setting policy. It's a legal document to cover my ass. Right? That I disclose to the employee, this is what the expectations are. But effort and work ethic, those are not well defined. Why would I start putting poorly defined things in there? You know, what's essentially a legal document. So once again, he's just full of shit. And they're both full of shit and they're laughing about it. But in their minds, it's, this problem is the individual's not trying hard enough. And the beauty of that philosophy is, then there's no problem that we can ever fix. Except for we just have to treat, we just have to whip the slaves more. Because they don't want to work hard enough. I mean, what else are you going to do? Right? So there's no solution to the problem except for this generation sucks. That's all they can say. And that's all they're going to keep saying. And they're getting this from this guy, Eberstadt, who's a conservative economist, and he's kind of an idiot. But we're not going to go too much into him. But I want to play a little bit more of this real quick, just so they can...
Politically incorrect, yeah.
Well, I mean, listen, that guy you just talked to, Anthony, right? I mean, he's got questions. Those questions are always relevant, and you're great at answering them on a micro level, right? Like, what do you do from a leadership standpoint? How can you help train your people?
Yeah.
But what you and I are talking about now is what happens when that guy, Anthony, he's still got to run his business, but the pool from which he can recruit went from this big to something about a third of the size.
Yeah.
We got 7.2 million able-bodied men in prime working age sitting out the workforce. That's never happened in peacetime.
By sitting out, we mean they are not counted in the unemployment statistics because they're not trying to get a job.
That's right.
That's the Nick Eberstadt number, right?
Okay, so that's their big concern is all these guys not working, right? And we've covered this before. All right, here's what happens. And I'll sum it up a little bit real quick. So, hang on.
Get cable-free live TV with no hidden fees or...
Okay.
Hey, cable-free live TV.
There you go. Okay. So, this phenomenon has been going on since 1953. In 1953, we were at peak employment. And it's slowly gone down since then, but more and more men are not working or looking for jobs. What they didn't do in their video, if you notice, is they didn't say what kind of people these are. They didn't identify them, right? They're just men, right? But what they did do is they implied what kind of people they are. They're undriven, lazy, effortless, PC kind of guys, right? When that's not the case. And in fact, the Obama administration, when he was president, he spent a ton of money on economists trying to solve this problem about why so many of these men aren't working. This has been going on for 70 years. This has been increasing. So to sit there and say it's a new thing or act like it's a new thing is total horseshit. This is a 70-year-long problem. And Obama spent a ton of money studying it. And I just want to look at this article real quick on why so many men aged 25 to 54 aren't working. But I want to look at this video here. Okay.
Hi, I'm David Wessel.
So this is, I'm just going to skip here.
If you look over the last several...
So this guy on the left is the interviewer. The guy on the right was one of the economists that worked on this for Obama for years. And he's going to explain what's going on, why so many of these men aren't working.
decades, what has happened to the fraction of prime-age men who are working or looking for work?
The fraction of prime-age men who are working or looking for work has fallen continuously since the 1950s. In the early 1950s, 98% of men in that age bracket had a job. Most of them had a job, or the ones that didn't were actively looking for one. Today, that fraction has fallen down to 88%, and that process pretty much took place over about a half century.
So if you look at all the men between these eight in this prime age group, 12% of them aren't even looking for work.
That's right. They have, given up looking for work, and for most of them, when we look at them, they didn't have a job the year before and weren't looking for work the year before either. This isn't just I'll take a month off from searching for a job. This seems to be, for the bulk of these men, a real long-run state for them.
So people always wonder when I talk about prime age men, well, what about...
So I wanted to just cover that. So he's nailing down what the problem is here. It's grown over the years, but it's been many, many years. It's been decades and decades. The other thing,
right? It's not just an all of a sudden thing.
Right.
This didn't just happen since the pandemic, or it didn't just happen since the crash of 2008 and it never came back, or it's not that situation, not any of those situations.
No,
which it sounds almost when Rowe and Ramsey are discussing, they're kind of making it seem like it's an all of a sudden thing, or maybe it's since 2008 and people have just stayed out, or since the pandemic and people have stayed out,
or they got lazy or something but it has to be that way for them. He's got some, if you guys get a chance, you should watch that whole video and I'll link it, but where he talks about this. But first question is let's identify who they are. Okay. Right. If you're on a statistical thing where we're looking at, what's the actual problem? So it's not just, it's men, but what type of men? Let's try to narrow it down. Right. Well, here we go. In the article, and this is the same article for this. Who are these men? They're disproportionately low-income men who either dropped out of high school or didn't go beyond a high school diploma. They're not spending any more time on childcare, not spending any more time on chores. They're spending a lot more time watching TV than men who are in the labor force, right? So why are there so many since the economy bounced back? Surely some of these guys don't want to work or are getting by on their wives' incomes. But Furman, who's the economist there, says less than a quarter of the men who aren't in the workforce have a working wife, and this fraction has been decreasing for 50 years. It turns out not having a job or looking for one isn't a great way to find a wife. That makes sense. I mean, who wants to marry somebody who's a sponge, right? Some of these men are getting by on government benefits such as Social Security, disability, but the increasing these men on disability isn't nearly large enough to account for the growth in the ranks of men not at work. So it's not like these guys are getting handouts. A lot of these guys are just flat broke. The big reason men aren't working or looking for work is because they've realized that employers aren't interested in hiring workers with few skills or little education. So they've given up. So here we have, they're using Eberstadt, who's a Mike Rowe and Dave Ramsey. Eberstadt's a conservative economist. Eberstadt doesn't address the education issue at all. He doesn't even note that these men are high school or less. Doesn't note it in any of his research because he works for a conservative think tank. He doesn't have to prove anything, right? He's just going to be accepted. But
Right.
But the bottom line is this guy Furman, he's actually working for the government trying to solve this problem. And what is the solution? We need to get these guys skills. We need to get them education. If they have those, now they're competitive in the workforce. But they don't have those. So Obama pushed for all these with just, re-education programs or education programs to get people to, especially a lot of these guys live in the South. They live in rural communities where there's not a lot of work anyway, to get them to move to places where there are jobs, to get them free education.
Yeah, see, that's another thing I'm remembering back to a point in time where my father was unhappy with his employer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my late father, that I'm speaking of, did not even have a high school education, but he had grown into a management position with his company, and so he had good benefits and a good salary, etc. And now he did not quit his job and stay unemployed, so I'm not trying to paint that picture.
No.
But essentially, his lack of education made it impossible for him to go elsewhere. He became unhappy with his employer, and he kind of went looking about, and he was in a small community.
Mm-hmm.
He went looking about, and he was like, what are my other options here? And trying to figure out what his other options were. And he was like, any of my other options are going to pay me almost nothing, like not a surviving sort of wage. There's no point in doing that. And so he stayed where he was at. He didn't become unemployed. But my point being, what I'm seeing as being the situation, if some of these guys had never grown themselves into these higher level management positions where they have these good wages, when they look around and see what their options are.
Well, a lot of these guys grew up in an era where you couldn't just get that job out of high school.
Right.
So they're stuck.
Couldn't necessarily grow themselves up. But even looking around and seeing what few options that they actually have, and if they're in smaller communities, there might be a handful of options that don't pay very well that are already jobs that are scooped up by people.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they don't pay very well. There's compounding factors here.
Well, right. But here's the joke on the whole thing, right? On the one side, you have Dave Ramsey and Mike Rowe, and their thing is, well, these people are kind of just lazy. They don't want to work. Effort's a bad thing. It's a cultural issue. There's not much we can do other than, force cultural things onto our kids that they have to be this way or that way, yada, yada, yada. And it's a culture war that they're fighting, as opposed to looking at it like an actual economic financial problem. Because an economic financial problem is simply that, well, let's survey these guys and let's figure out what's going on. Why aren't you looking for work? Because nobody's hiring somebody like me because I don't have the skills. Oh, well, what if you had the skills? Would you be looking for work? Probably, because I could probably get a decent job paying decent money. Well, what if we just got them the skills? What if we put them through school, spent the money? But these guys aren't. These guys are against student loan forgiveness. These guys are against free college. No. These guys don't want you to go to college. They think going to college is a bad idea. That it's a waste of time and money.
Okay, in all fairness, they didn't say that it was a waste of time and money, but they did say that it's
They-
not for everybody.
They do say it's a waste of time and money a lot. You watch the borrowed futures thing. They're basically, well, they say college is good if you can pay for it, but you shouldn't be able to borrow money to go to school. But basically, they're saying we don't want poor people going to school. Or, you know, in fact, if you watch that video, they tell all the minority kids not to go to college, but the one white kid, they're all for. I'm not saying it's racist. I'm just saying watch it and tell me it isn't. Anyway, so I did a breakdown of it. It's really terrible. But that's the whole gag with this is I just think it's a joke. Right? Because they don't seem to talk about the problem or look at the issue of the problem. It's just these people are lazy or it's a cultural issue. But it can't be a cultural issue if it's 70 years old.
Yeah. Again, I'm gonna say this is where I have a different opinion than Duncan about what the Ramsey people believe. I think they're fine with college. I think they're completely out of touch with their ideas that, you know, everyone can just magically work their way through college and not borrow. I think that's out of touch, but I don't think they're against people going per se.
I think they're against people borrowing money to go to school, which is what 90+% of people have to do anyway. I mean, if you take that away, then basically you're saying only the rich kids get to go to school.
Right.
Unless you're saying we're going to pay for school and make it free or make it cheap, like it was when Dave Ramsey went to school. He paid $362 a year to go to school.
In all fairness, I do think people borrow entirely more than they need to. They borrow like extra cushions worth of money frequently. I've kind of run into that too, which isn't necessarily a great idea. But to say people shouldn't be able to borrow any at all is
well, you're basically you're cutting poor people out of school, which is mostly you're cutting minorities out,
right?
Which is what they want. They're all for that.
I mean, it's a pretty blind sort of like you've got your blinders on. Like you have so much privilege, you have these blinders to anybody that doesn't have that sort of privilege.
Absolutely.
You know, everybody can just magically
pay for it somehow. Yeah. Which is not the issue.
Exactly. And I don't even think they realize that they have total blinders on there because they're so blind about it. They're so blind about it, they literally can't even see.
Right.
That they can't see.
Right. So, anyway, you mind if we take a quick break right here?